So over the last 2 weeks, I've been making my way through the Despicable Me franchise. Now that I've seen all four, I can rank all four. So the Despicable Me franchise has been around for the past 10 years, probably making it the most popular franchise, animated franchise anyways, over the last 10 years. I can't think of any other franchise that comes close to the popularity for this franchise, as well the financially gains this franchise has made. It franchise alone has made over 3 billion at the box office, which is just insane for this animated franchise to make this much. And just before I give my opinion on these movies and where I rank them from worst to best, make sure you let me know your opinion on where you rank these movies from worst to best in the comment section. But with all that said, let's go on and actually give my opinion on what comes in at number 4. And coming in number 4 is probably the obvious choice to most people, but I do have the Minions movie. The Minions, for me, I'm never really a big fan of them. Of course, on Facebook, not so much anymore. But back when this movie came out, you always see like older women putting up all these kind of memes with the Minions that don't really mean anything. It's just a saying and then a picture of a minion. That was kind of flooding back the time when the Minions movie came out. This is actually also my second viewing of the movie. First time I seen it was when it came out. Wasn't a fan of it then, but then when I decided to do this ranking, I said, okay, I'm gonna have to rewatch this movie. And it took me 3 days. I watched it in installments because I was watching. I'm like, yeah, I can't watch anymore. I'd rather go to sleep than watch this. So I had to keep pausing it and coming back to it just because I just could not stick with this humor. The humor for me, I felt like this movie was all the bottom of the barrel jokes. None of the jokes landed. Nothing really landed. For people who cannot talk properly, they sing way too much in this movie. It felt to me very much like in Toy Story, you've got the aliens. Aliens are great side characters, but you're not going to do an alien spin-off movie, and that's what I felt like the Minions was. A spin-off movie to something that they worked well in a separate movie, but on a spin-off, it doesn't really work. Like some things I did, like I like the villain con, I like that family of villains, but other than that, wasn't really a fan of anything. Scarlet Overkill, like the Despicable Me franchise, the villains are great, but this villain in particular, I just wasn't really a fan of her at all. Her villainous portrayal, I just really didn't like her character. But I am still intrigued to see what they do with Minions Rise of Gru, which is actually supposed to be out already by now, but next year we'll be seeing it. I'm actually looking forward to seeing how that movie does play out. Fingers crossed it is better than the first Minions. And then coming in number 3, I have Despicable Me 3. Like I said with this kind of franchise in general, the villains to this are just a lot of fun and they're all very different. And this movie has got no exception. The villain in this movie is a guy who like peaked in the 80s. So his mindset is all about the 80s. He walks around with a Walkman. He sings 80s hits. He kind of references, talks about the 80s way too much for someone from 2017. And I think the villain just works really well. My problem with this movie is not only does it feel unnecessary, Despicable Me 1 and 2, they have the story, they have an ending, and they continue on. But I just think the way they continued on the storyline just didn't feel necessary at all. It felt very forced. I felt like they needed to do another one, but they couldn't think of a good story to do because there's so many storylines in this movie, and so many I don't actually care about. You've got Gru and his brother, who I thought there was so much wasted potential there. They could have done so much emotion there that I think a Disney or a Pixar movie or even just a DreamWorks movie, they would have got that emotion. But what they did with Despicable Me 3, they didn't go for that emotion, which kind of surprised me, because if it was Despicable Me or Despicable Me 2, they definitely would have went for that emotion. You also have the storyline of Lucy growing and becoming a mother, didn't care about that. You've also got the story of Agnes and the middle girl trying to find a unicorn, also didn't really care for that. As well, the Minions going to prison, didn't care for that storyline either. So the fact that I just think this movie just doesn't really feel necessary at all, and so much of the storylines I just did not enjoy whatsoever. And then coming in number 2, we've got Despicable Me 2. I like this movie for the introduction of the character of Lucy. I think she's got a really good back and forward with Gru. It feels so natural and I just like her. I'm not a fan of her in Despicable Me 3, but her in this movie I just think works really, really well. And I'm not personally really a fan of Kristen Wiig, but I just think her voice kind of works well with this character, because I find the character to be annoying, but I think it was intended to be annoying, so her voice fits with that really well. My problem with this one is this villain is probably the most forgettable, and the reason being is this movie is just shy of an hour and 40. It's like an hour and 37, hour 38 minutes long. We don't get introduced to the actual villain to an hour and 10 minutes and we get introduced to him beforehand, but because it's a mystery villain, we don't know who it actually is. We don't get to see time with our heroes trying to stop our villains till almost half an hour left in the runtime. So we don't really get much, especially because the Despicable Me movies are not only about family, but they're also about the villains, and the fact that we don't really get to spend much time with the villains kind of makes this fall flat just a little bit. But what he does do, I think, is kind of pretty cool. The fact that he takes the minions, makes them into these big purple monsters, and then they kind of go off and that. But the one that kind of downsides this movie, that brings it down to that number 2 spot, is the fact that the father-daughter relationship between Gru and the girls is very much a B plot. It feels very much like they have to have it there, but they didn't really know what to do with it, opposed to what they did in the first movie. But one thing in particular I kind of found really funny, and I'm 100% sure this isn't Easter egg to the 40-year-old virgin. At the end of the movie, we do get to see the wedding of Gru and Lucy. Of course, it takes place out in a field somewhere. We do get a big song and dance with the entire cast. 100% that is definitely an Easter egg to the 40-year-old virgin. Also because Steve Carell is in the 40-year-old virgin, and he also voices Gru. So there's not a doubt in my mind that that is definitely a reference to the 40-year-old virgin. And then coming in number 1, you've probably already guessed it, it's Despicable Me. I just think this movie works on all fronts. I kind of gave the other 3 below 40%, where I give this one a 75% and probably 80% in around there, because I just think this works really well. The main factor being is the relationship between Gru and the girls just works really well. They have a front and center, and it just grows, especially when they go to that amusement park and they're having a lot of fun. From that point onwards, they're actually growing as a father-daughter relationship, and it just really works for me as well. The villain in this movie is probably the most fun villain out of them all. Victor is just, he's such a weird, he's such a daddy's boy, and he's just everything his dad does, and he wants to impress his dad, and it just works really well for me in that aspect as well. The minions, this is the only movie where I actually enjoy the minions, and the rest of them I kind of find them a bit irritating, but this movie, I think they work. They're funny in this movie, they got some enjoyable moments in this movie as well. Also, the villainous aspect, the seeing Gru actually be the villain trying to steal the moon, all that just works well for me. That's why it has to come in at number 1. But that's just my ranking of the Despicable Me franchise. If you want to see more rankings from me in the future, make sure you click that subscribe button so you can come back next time I do a ranking. I've got a few I'm working on at the moment, so if you want to see some of them in the future, click that subscribe button. But if you want to see more right now, I'll leave a link right up here to my ranking of all 4 of the Toy Story movies, and then a link right up here to all 4 of the Hunger Games movies. So if you want to see either of these rankings, they're up here right now. But as always, thanks for watching.